I had never seen Christine when she didn't look good to me and make me feel lightheaded. She's tall, almost 5'10", and that's nice. She had a smile that could probably light up half the country. That night she was wearing tight faded jeans and a white t-shirt knotted around her waist. Her feet were bare and her nails were dabbed with red polish. Her beautiful brown eyes were shining. I reached out and took her into my arms, and suddenly everything seemed right with the world. I forgot all about the terrible case I just finished. I forgot about the particularly vicious killer known as Mr. Smith. I cupped her sweet, kind face gently in my hands. I like to think that nothing scares me anymore, and many things don't, but I guess the more good things you have in your life, the easier it is to experience fear. Christine felt so precious to me, so maybe I was scared. Heart leads head. It isn't the way most men act, but I was learning. I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life, Christine. You help me see and feel things in new ways. I love your smile, your way with people, especially children, your kindness. I love to hold you like this. I love you more than I could say if I stood here and talked for the rest of the night. I love you so much. Will you marry me, Christine? She didn't answer right away. I felt her pull back just a little, and my heart caught. I looked into her eyes, and what I saw was pain and uncertainty. It nearly broke my heart. Oh, Alex, Alex, she whispered, and looked as if she might cry. I can't give you an answer. You just came back from Boston. You were on another horrible, horrible murder case. I can't take that. Your life was in danger again. That terrible madman was in your house. He threatened your family. You can't deny any of that. I couldn't. It had been a terrifying experience, and I had nearly died. I won't deny anything you said, but I do love you. I can't deny that either. I'll quit the police force if that's what it takes. No. A softness came into her eyes. She shook her head back and forth. That would be all wrong for both of us. We held each other on the porch, and I knew we were in trouble. I didn't know how to resolve it. I had no idea. Maybe if I left the force, became a full-time therapist again, led a more normal life for Christine and the kids. But could I do that? Could I really quit? Ask me again, she whispered. Ask me again sometime. Chapter 8. Christine and I had dated since that night, and it just felt right, easy, comfortable, and romantic. It always was that way between us. Still, I wondered if our problem could be fixed. Could she be happy with a homicide detective? Could I stop being one? I didn't know. I was brought out of my reverie about Christine by the high-pitched, stuttering wail of a siren out of 12th Street, just turning off E. I winced when I saw Sampson's black Nissan pull up in front of St. Anthony's. He turned off the siren on his rooftop, but then beeped the car horn, sat on it. I knew he was here for me, probably to take me somewhere I didn't want to go. The horn continued to blare. It's your friend John Sampson, Jimmy Moore called out. You hear him, Alex? I know who it is, I called back to Jimmy. I'm hoping he goes away. Sure doesn't sound like it. I finally walked outside, crossing through the soup kitchen line and receiving a few jokey jeers. People I had known for a long time accused me of working half a day, or said that if I didn't like the job, could they have it? What's up? I called to Sampson before I got all the way out to his black sports car. Sampson's side window came sliding down. I leaned inside the car. You forget it's my day off, I reminded him. "It's Nina Child," Sampson said, in the low, soft voice he used only when he was angry or very serious. He was trying to deaden his facial muscles to look tough, not emotional, but it wasn't working real well. "Nina's dead, Alex." I shivered involuntarily. I opened the car door and got in. I didn't even go back to the kitchen to tell Jimmy Moore I was leaving. Sampson jerked the car away from the curbside fast. The siren came on again, but now I almost welcomed the mournful wail. It numbed me. "What do you know so far?" I asked as we rushed along the intensely bleak streets of Southeast, then crossed the slate-gray Anacostia River. "She was dumped in a row house, 18th and Gainesville. Jerome Thurman is out there with her. Says she's probably been there since the weekend. Some needle pusher found the body. No clothes or ID, Alex," Sampson said. I looked over at him. "So how did they know it was Nina?" "Uniform guy on the scene recognized her, knew her from the hospital. Everybody knew Nina." I shut my eyes, but I saw Nina Childs' face, and I opened them again. She had been the 11 to 7 charge nurse in the ER unit at St. Anthony's Hospital, where once I'd run like a tornado with a dying little boy in my arms. Sampson and I had worked with Nina more times than I could remember. Sampson had also dated Nina for over a year, but then they'd broken it off. She'd married a neighborhood man who worked for the city. They had 2 kids, 2 little babies, and Nina had seemed so happy the last time I saw her. I couldn't believe she was lying dead in a tenement cellar on the wrong side of the Anacostia. She had been abandoned like one of the Jane Does. Chapter 9. Nina Childs' body had been found in a battered row house in one of the city's most impoverished, destroyed, and dismaying neighborhoods. There was only one patrol car on the scene and a single rusted and dented EMS van. Homicides in Southeast don't attract much attention. A dog was barking somewhere, and it was the only sound on the desolate street. Sampson and I had to walk past an open-air drug mart on the corner of 18th Street. Mostly young males, but a few children, 2 women were also gathered there, defiantly. The drug marts are everywhere in this part of Southeast. The neighborhood youth activity is the crack trade. "Daily body pickup officers," said one of the young men. He was wearing black trousers with black suspenders, no shirt, socks, or shoes. He had a prison yard physique and tattoos everywhere. "Come to take out the trash," an older man cackled from behind an unruly patch of salt and pepper beard. "Take that motherfucking barking all night, dog, while you're here. Make yourselves useful," he added. Sampson and I ignored them and continued walking across 18th and into the boarded-up 3-storied row house straight ahead. A black and white boxer leaned out of a 3rd-floor window like a lifetime resident and wouldn't stop barking. Otherwise, the building appeared deserted. The front door had been jimmied 100 times, so it just swung open for us. The building smelled of fire, garbage, water damage. There was a gaping hole in the ceiling from a burst steam pipe. It was so wrong for Nina to have ended up in this sad, abominable place. For over a year, I had been unofficially investigating unsolved murders in Southeast, many of them Jane Does. My count was well over 100, but no one else in the department was willing to agree to that number or anything close to it. Several of the murdered women were drug abusers or prostitutes, but not Nina. We carefully descended a circular stairwell that had a shaky, well-worn wooden railing that neither of us would touch. I could see flashlights shining up ahead, and I already had my mag light turned on. Nina was deep in the basement of the abandoned building. At least somebody had bothered to tape off the perimeter to protect the crime scene. I saw Nina's body, and I had to look away. It wasn't just that she was dead, it was how she'd been killed. I tried to put my mind and eyes somewhere else until I regained some composure. Jerome Thurman was there with the EMS team, so was a single patrol officer, probably the one who had identified Nina. No Emmy was present. It wasn't unusual for a medical examiner not to show up for homicides in Southeast. There were dead flowers on the floor near the body. I focused on the flowers, still not able to look at Nina again. It didn't fit with the other Jane Does, but the killer didn't have a strict pattern. That was one of the problems I was having. It might mean that his fantasy was still evolving, and that he hadn't finished making up his gruesome story yet. I noted shreds of foil and cellophane wrappers lying everywhere on the floor. Rats are attracted to shiny things and often bring them back to their nests. Thick cobwebs weaved from one end of the basement to the other. I had to look at Nina again. I needed to look closely. "I'm Detective Alex Cross. Let me take a look at her, please," I finally said to the EMS team, a man and a woman in their 20s. "I'll just be a couple of minutes, then I'll get out of your way." The other detectives already released the body. The male EMS worker said. He was real thin with long, dirty blonde hair. He didn't bother to look up at me. "Let us finish our job and get the hell out of this cesspool. Whole area is highly infectious, smells like shit." "Just back away," Sampson barked. "Get up before I pull your skinny ass up." The EMS techie cursed, but he stood and backed away from Nina's body. I moved in close, tried to concentrate and be professional, tried to remember specific details I had gathered about the previous Jane Does in Southeast. I was looking for some connection. I wondered if a single predator could possibly be killing so many people. If that was the case, then this would be one of the most savage killing sprees ever. I took a deep breath and then I knelt over Nina. The rats had been at her, I could see, but the killer had done much worse damage. It looked to me as if Nina had been beaten to death, with punches and possibly kicks. She might have been struck 100 times or more. I had rarely seen anyone given this much punishment. Why did it have to happen? She was only 31 years old, a mother of 2, kind, talented, dedicated to her work at St. Anthony's. There was a sudden noise, like a rifle shot, in the building. It reverberated right through the basement walls. The EMS workers jumped. The rest of us laughed nervously. I knew exactly what the sound was. "Just rat traps," I said to the EMS team. "Get used to it." Chapter 10. I was at the homicide scene for a little over 2 hours, much longer than I wanted to be there. And I hated every second. I couldn't fix a set pattern for the Jane Doe killings, and Nina Childs' murder didn't help. Why had he struck her so many times and so savagely? What were the flowers doing there? Could this be the work of the same killer? The way I usually operate at a crime scene is to let the homicide investigation take on an almost aerial view. Everything emanates from the body. Sampson and I walked the entire crime scene from the basement to each floor and on up to the roof. Then we walked the neighborhood. Nobody had seen anything unusual, which didn't surprise either of us. Now came the really bad part. Sampson and I drove from the woeful tenement to Nina's apartment in the Brooklyn section of Washington, east of Catholic University. I knew I was being sucked in again, but there was nothing I could do about it. It was a sweltering hot day, and the sun hammered Washington without mercy. We were both silent and withdrawn during the ride. What we had to do was the worst thing about our job, telling a family about the death of a loved one. I didn't know how I could do it this time. Nina's building was a well-kept brown brick apartment house on Monroe Street. Miniature yellow roses were blooming out front in bright green window boxes. It didn't look as if anything bad should happen to someone who lived here. Everything about the place was so bright and hopeful, just as Nina had been. I was becoming more and more disturbed and upset about the brutal and obscene murder, and about the fact that it probably wouldn't get a decent investigation from the department, at least not officially. Nana Mama would chalk it up to her conspiracy theories about the white overlords and their criminal disinterest in the people of Southeast. She had often told me that she felt morally superior to white people, that she would never ever treat them the way they treated the black people of Washington. Nina's sister Marie takes care of the kids, Sampson said as we rode down Monroe. She's a nice girl. Had a drug problem one time, beat it, Nina helped her. The whole family is close-knit, a lot like yours. This is going to be real bad, Alex. I turned to him. Not surprisingly, he was taking Nina's death even harder than I was. It's unusual for him to show his emotions, though. I can do it, John. You stay here in the car. I'll go up and talk to the family. Sampson shook his head and sighed loudly. Doesn't work that way, sugar. He snugged the Nissan up to the curb, and we both climbed out. He didn't stop me from coming along to the apartment, so I knew he wanted me to be there with him. He was right. This was going to be bad. The child's apartment took up the first and second floors. The front door was slightly ornate, aluminum. Nina's husband was already at the door. He had on the proletariat uniform of the D.C. Housing Authority where he worked. Mud-stained work boots, blue trousers, a shirt marked DCHA. One of the babies snuggled in his arms, a beautiful girl who looked at me and smiled and cooed. Could we come inside for a moment? Sampson asked. It's Nina, the husband said, and started to break down right there in the doorway. I'm sorry, William. I spoke softly. You're right. She's gone. She was found this morning. William Childs started to sob loudly. He was a potential-looking working man, but that didn't matter. He held his bewildered little girl to his chest and tried to control the crying, but he couldn't. Oh, gosh, no. Oh, Nina, baby. How could somebody kill her? How could anybody do that? Oh, Nina. A young, pretty woman came up behind me. She had to be Nina's sister, Marie. She took the baby from her sister's husband, and the little girl began to scream as if she knew what had happened. I had seen so many families, so many good people who had lost loved ones on these merciless streets. I knew it would never completely stop, but I felt it ought to get better. It never did. The sister motioned for us to come inside, and I noticed a hall table on which there were 2 pocketbooks, as if Nina were still about. The apartment was comfortable looking and neat, with light bamboo and white cushion furniture. The whir of a window air conditioner was constant. I don't know how to pronounce LLADRO. Porcelain figure of a nurse stood on an end table. I was still soaring through details of the homicide scene, trying to connect the murder to the other Jane Does. We learned that Nina had attended a healthcare charity dinner on Saturday night. William had been working overtime. The family called the police late Saturday night. 2 detectives had shown up, but no one had been able to find Nina until now. Then I was holding the baby while Nina's sister took the chill off a bottle of formula. It was such a sad and poignant moment, knowing this poor little girl would never see her mother again, never know how truly special her mother had been. It reminded me of my own kids, and their mother, and of Christine, who was afraid I would die during some murder investigation like this one. The older little girl came up to me while I was holding her baby sister. She was 2 or 3 at the most. I got a new hairstyle, she said proudly, and did a half turn to show me. You did? It's beautiful. Who did those braids for you? My mommy, said the girl. It was an hour later when Sampson and I finally left the house. We drove away in silence and despair, the same way we'd come. After a couple blocks, Sampson pulled over in front of a ramshackle neighborhood bodega covered with beer and soda posters. He gave a deep sigh, put his hands to his face, and then cried. I'd never ever seen John like this before, not in all the years we'd been friends. Not even when we were just boys. I reached out and laid a hand on his shoulder, and he didn't move away. Then he told me something he hadn't shared before. I loved her, Alex, but I let her get away. I never told her how I felt. We have to get this son of a bitch. Chapter 11. I sensed I was at the start of another homicide mess. I didn't want it, but I couldn't stop the horror. I had to try to do something about the Jane Does. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Although I was assigned to the 7th District as a senior detective, my job as liaison with the FBI gave me some extra status, and also the freedom to occasionally work without too much supervision or interference. My mind was running free, and I'd already made some associations between Nina's murder and at least some of the unsolved killings. First, there had been no identification on the victims at each crime scene. Second, the bodies had frequently been dumped in buildings where they might not be found quickly. Third, not a single witness had seen anyone who might be a suspect. The most we ever got was that there had been traffic or people out on the street where one of the bodies had been found. That told me that the killer knew how to blend in and that he possibly was a black man. Around 6 that night, I finally headed home. This was supposed to be my day off. I had things to do there, and I was trying to balance the demands of job and home life as best I could. I put on a happy face and headed inside the house. Damon, Johnny, and Nana were singing Sit Down near Rockin' the Boat in the kitchen. The show tune was music to my ears and other essential parts of my anatomy. The kids looked happy as could be. There is a lot to be said for the innocence of childhood. I heard Nina say, "How about I can tell the world?" Then the 3 of them launched into one of the most beautiful spirituals I know. Damon's voice seemed particularly strong to me. I hadn't really noticed that before. I feel like I just walked into a story by Louisa May Alcott, I said, laughing for the first time that long day. I take that as a high compliment, Nana said. She was somewhere between her late 70s and early 80s now, but not telling and also not showing her age. Who's Louise Mays Alcott? Johnny said and made a lemon-sucking face. She is a healthy little skeptic, though almost never a cynic. In that way, she takes after both her father and her grandmother. Look it up tonight, little one. 50 cents in your pocket for the correct answer, I told her. You're on, Jenny grinned. You can pay me right now if you like. Me too? Damon asked. Of course, you can look up Jane Austen, I said to him. Now, what's with the heavenly harmonizing? I like it very much, by the way. I just want to know what the special occasion is. We're just singing while we prepare dinner, Nana said, and stuck up her nose and twinkled her eyes. You play jazz and the blues on the piano, don't you? We harmonize like angels sometimes, no special reason necessary. Good for the soul and the soul food, I suppose. Can't hurt. Well, don't stop singing on my account, I said, but they had already stopped. Too bad. Something was going on, I'd figured out that much. A musical mystery to be solved in my own house. We still on for boxing after dinner? I asked cautiously. I was feeling a little vulnerable because I didn't want them to turn me down for the boxing lesson that has become a ritual. Of course, Damon said, and frowned like I must be out of my mind to even ask such a question. Of course, pshaw. Who wouldn't be? Why wouldn't we be? Johnny said, and brushed off my silly question with a wave of her hand. How's Miss Johnson? She asked then. You two talk today? I still want to know what the singing was all about, I answered Johnny with a question of my own. You have valuable information. Well, so do I. Tit for tat, she said. How do you like that? A little later, I decided to call Christine at home. Lately, it had seemed more like the way it had been between us before I got involved with the Mr. Smith case. We talked for a while, and then I asked her to go out on Friday. Of course I'd like that, Alex. What should I wear? She asked. I hesitated. Well, I always like what you choose, but wear something special. She didn't ask why. Chapter 12. After one of Nana's roast chicken dinners with baked sweet potatoes and homemade bread, I took the kids downstairs for their weekly boxing lesson. Following the Tuesday night fight with the kids, I glanced at my watch and saw that it was already a little past 9. The doorbell rang a moment later. I sat down a terrific book called The Color of Water and pushed myself up from my chair in the family room. I'll get it. It's probably for me, I called out. Maybe it's Christine. You never know, Johnny teased, then darted away into the kitchen. Both of the kids adored Christine, in spite of the fact that she was the principal at their school. I knew exactly who was out on the porch. I'd been expecting 4 homicide detectives from the 1st District, Jerome Thurman, Rakeem Powell, Sean Moore, and Sampson. 3 of the detectives were standing out on the porch. Rosie the cat and I let them inside. Sampson arrived about 5 minutes later, and we all gathered in the backyard. What we were doing at the house wasn't illegal, but it wouldn't make us a lot of friends in high places in the police department. We sat on lawn chairs, and I set out beer and low-fat pretzels that 270-pound Jerome scoffed at. Beer and low-fat pretzels? Give me a break, Alex. You lost your mind? Hey, you have an affair with my wife. You must have had this bad idea from Claudette. I bought these especially for you, big man. I'm trying to give your heart a break, I told him, and the others guffawed loudly. We all pick on Jerome. The 5 of us have been getting together informally for a couple of weeks. We were beginning to work on the John Does, as we called them. Homicide had no official investigation going on. It wasn't trying to link the murders to a serial killer. I'd tried to start one and been turned down by Chief Pittman. He claimed that I hadn't discovered a pattern linking any of the murders, and besides that, he didn't have any extra detectives for duty in Southeast. I suppose you've all heard about Nina Childs by now? Sampson asked the other detectives. All of them had known Nina, and of course, Jerome had been at the murder scene with us. The good die young, Rakeem Powell frowned severely and shook his head. Rakeem is smart and tough and could go all the way in the department. At least they do in Southeast. His eyes went cold and hard. I told them what I knew, especially that Nina had been found with no ID. I mentioned everything else I had noticed at the tenement crime scene. I also took the occasion to talk some more about the rash of unsolved murders in Southeast. I went over the devastating stats I compiled mostly in my free time. Statistic like that in Georgetown or the Capital District, people in the city be enraged, going ballistic, be Washington Post headlines every day. The president himself be involved, money no object, national tragedy. Jerome Thurman railed on and waved his arms around like signal flags. Well, we are here to do something about it, I said in a calmer voice. Money is no object with us, neither is time. Let me tell you what I feel about this killer, I continued. I think I know a few things about him. How'd you come up with the profile? Sean Moore asked. How can you stand thinking about these kinky bastards as much as you do? I shrugged. It's what I do best. I've analyzed all the Jane Does. I said it took me weeks, working on my own, just me and the kinky bastard. Plus he studies rodent droppings, said Sampson. I saw him bagging the little turds. That's his real secret. I grinned and told them what I had so far. I think one male is responsible for at least some of the killings, maybe as many as a dozen murders. I don't think he's a brilliant killer like Gary Sinigi or Mr. Smith, but he is clever enough not to be caught. He's organized, reasonably careful. I don't think we'll find that he has any prior record. He probably has a decent job, maybe even a family. My FBI friends at Quantico agree with that. He's almost definitely caught up in an escalating fantasy cycle. I think he's into his fantasies big time. Maybe he's in the process of becoming someone or something new. He might be forming a new personality for himself. He isn't finished with the killing, not by any means. I'll make some educated guesses. He hates his old self, though the people closest to him probably don't realize it. He might be ready to abandon his family, job, any friends he has. At one time, he probably had very strong feelings and beliefs about something. Law and order, religion, the government, but not anymore. He kills in different ways. There's no set formula. He knows a lot about killing people. He's used different kinds of weapons. He may have traveled overseas, or maybe he's spent time in Asia. I think it's very possible he's a black man. He's killed several times in Southeast. No one's noticed him. Fuck me, Jerome Thurman said to that. Any good news, Alex? One thing, and this is a long shot, but it feels right to me. I think he might be suicidal. If it's the profile I'm working on, he's living dangerously, taking a lot of chances. He might just blow himself up. Pop goes the weasel, Sampson said. That was how he came to name the killer, the Weasel. Chapter 13. Jeffrey Schaefer looked forward to playing the Four Horsemen every Thursday night from 9 until about 1 in the morning. The fantasy game was everything to him. There were 3 other master players around the world. The players were the rider on the white horse, Conqueror, the rider on the red horse, War, the rider on the black horse, Famine, and himself, the rider on the pale horse, Death. Lucy and the children knew they were forbidden to disturb him for any reason once he locked himself into the library on the second floor. On one wall was his collection of ceremonial daggers, nearly all of them purchased in Hong Kong and Bangkok. Also on the wall was the rowing oar from the year his college team had won the bumps. Schaefer nearly always won the games he played. He'd been using the internet to communicate with the other players for years, long before the rest of the world caught on. Conqueror played from the town of Dorking in Surrey, outside London. Famine traveled back and forth between Bangkok, Sydney, Melbourne, and Manila. And War usually played out of Jamaica, where he had a large estate on the sea. They had been playing horsemen for 7 years. Rather than becoming repetitive, the fantasy game had expanded itself. It had grown every year, becoming something new and even more challenging. The object was to create the most delicious and unusual fantasy or adventure. Violence was almost always part of the game, but not necessarily murder. Schaefer had been the first to claim that his stories weren't fantasies at all, that he lived them in the real world. Now the others would do so as well from time to time. Whether they really lived their fantasies, Schaefer couldn't tell. The object was to create the evening's most startling fantasy, to get a rise out of the other players. At 9 o'clock his time, Schaefer was on his laptop. So were the others. It was rare for one of them to miss a session, but if he did, he left lengthy messages and sometimes drawings or even photographs of supposed lovers or victims. Films were occasionally used, and the other players then had to decide whether the scenes were stage acted or cinema verite. Schaefer couldn't imagine missing a chapter of the game himself. Death was by far the most interesting character, the most powerful and original. He had missed important social and embassy affairs just to be available for Thursday nights. He had played when he had pneumonia, and once when he'd had a painful double hernia operation the day before. The Four Horsemen was unique in so many ways, but most important was the fact that there was no single game master to outline and control the action of the game. Each of the players had complete autonomy to write and visualize his own story, as long as he played by the roll of the dice and remained inside the parameters of the character. In effect, in Horsemen there were 4 game masters. There was no other fantasy game like it. It was as gruesome and shocking as the participants' imaginations and their skills at presentation brought them. Conquer, Famine, and War had all signed on. Schaefer began to type. Death has triumphed again in Washington. Let me tell you the details, then I'll listen to the glorious stories, the imaginative power of Conqueror, Famine, and War. I live for this, and I know all of you do as well. This weekend I drove my fantastic taxi, the Nightmare Machine. Once again, listen to this. I came upon several choice and delectable victims, but I rejected them as unworthy. Then I found my queen, and she reminded me of our days in Bangkok and Manila. Who could ever forget the bloodlust of the boxing arena? I held a mock kickboxing match. Gentlemen, I beat her with my hands and feet. I am sending pictures.